And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Matt Hendrick, who at the age of 21 took a dramatic turn in his life due to a spinal cord injury resulting in quadriplegia. Over the past 33 years, he's experienced multiple near-death experiences, encounters with the paranormal, alien abductions, and UFO phenomena. Matt, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm happy to be here.
Well,
nice to meet you.
We are happy to have you, Matt. If you don't mind, can you briefly tell us how you wound up becoming a quadriplegic?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, this was in 1991 when I was 21. I was going to college in upstate New York at the Rochester Institute of Technology, and I had only been there for about 9 weeks when my mom came up for a parents' weekend, and she picked me up. We were going to go do some touring around the Figure Lakes region up there, and it was a Saturday, and it was really rainy, and I remember her saying, be ready at 8 o'clock. And so I got up early and got ready, and I was out there in the parking lot waiting for her with an umbrella. And she picked me up, and I got in the rental car, and I was a little sick. I had some bronchitis, and I remember asking her to if we could just go back to her hotel and I could sleep for a little bit longer and maybe change our plan. And she was like, no, we're going to go. And so I got in, and I leaned the seat back all the way. And it was one of those cars. I don't know if you remember back in those days where you would get in and the shoulder belt would automatically come on you, and you'd have to fasten the lap belt yourself.
I remember those.
Yeah, it was that type of system. And, I get in, and, I'm 21. I'm like, shoulder belt, good enough. I don't need to do the lap belt. So I lean all the way back, and I'm sleeping. And next thing I know, I kind of wake up, and there's people tapping on the window. And I just remember going, hey, leave me alone. I just want to sleep, and people were like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I just wanted to sleep. And that's all I really remember. But yeah, we had hit something. We were in an accident. And then I have kind of like a little video clips, like a slideshow of what happened after that. So the next thing I know is I'm being hoisted up into a helicopter into the Flight for Life. I could see the rope, and then I remember seeing the nurse at the top, and her telling me that, you've been in a really bad car accident, and we're taking you to a special facility that can handle your injuries, and your mother will be going to a separate hospital. And then I kind of black out after that. And I kind of have little clips where I wake up, and there's somebody standing over me, and some medical person, maybe a RN or a CNA or something. And I'm like, okay, I got to get back to class. I got homework to do, is what I'm telling them. And they're kind of like, I don't think anyone's told you yet, but that's not going to happen. And I'm like, well, what do you mean that's not going to happen? And one of them said, you're paralyzed. And I was like, no, I'm not. There's no way. That's ridiculous. How could that happen? And and she said, you can't move your hands. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And I was trying to move my hands, and in my head they were moving. And she looks down at them, and she's like, they're not moving. So, I would black out and, kind of had a couple more instances of that where I was arguing with the medical people that I wasn't really paralyzed. So yeah, that's how that happened.
When did you have your first NDE?
That the first one occurred. Well, what happened was my parents they used their credit cards to get a medical jet for me to get back to Colorado from. That's where I'm originally from, is Colorado, from New York. So they got me back. I went pretty quickly into surgery, but I do remember getting to Swedish Medical Center in Colorado, and a lot of my friends were there. A lot of girls from college and high school were there. You know, like just girls that I've had crushes on my whole life, and you know, that meant a lot to me to see all the support. But I was rushed in to get my vertebrae stabilized, and they put this device on you called a halo, where it's pretty horrific to have this thing, and they don't even do it anymore. I'm not sure why, but they actually drill screws into your forehead and then into the back of your head, and it's got these metal things. You know, it kind of keeps your head rigid. You know, you just do a lot of eye movement, and you wear that for like 8 weeks or something. But it was during that surgery where I was all of a sudden being pulled up, you know, your regular tunnel of light that you hear about with other people's NDEs and stuff. And I remember it being like super comfortable, like just there's no temperature fluctuation. There's no, you know, it just feels great. Like who would ever want to be back in reality after that? You know, it was very inviting. And there's a white light at the top, and there's voices coming down. There's three people. It sounded like people to me, and I could see their silhouettes up there, kind of like they were kind of looking over an edge down at me. And you know, they were all three encouraging me to let go. You know, it's okay, let go. You know, this is over. You know, just, you know, there's nothing you can do. I'm like, wait, hang on. I don't want to go, you know. And they're like, no, you have no choice. You know, you're going, you're coming up, you know, it's over. This one's done. This one's done. I've heard that, you know, which is kind of interesting, I think. But I told him, you know, I was fighting to stay. And they're, you know, kind of like, why? Why do you want to stay? And I said, you know, have you seen how many women are coming to visit me in the hospital? And they laughed. They laughed hard. And all of a sudden I went zipped right back into my body on the wherever it was, on the operating table, or you know, and I was right back in my body. And that, you know, that's where it ended right there.
Who do you think those beings were?
You know, I have no idea, but I felt like I know them, you know. They felt like they were closer. Like I felt like I was more close with them than anyone that I've ever known. So it's a mystery.
You just went in for surgery and they put you out, like put you unconscious to do work on you. And then did you immediately leave your body, or at some point you just woke up in the tunnel?
I just woke up there. I remember being on the stretcher going into the surgery and seeing a lot more of my friends, you know, waiting. You know, they were there. We passed by them as I was going in. But then, you know, I don't remember any part of the surgery or any instructions or preparing. It just, I just remember waking up and being floating up.
So after you came back, did this experience change you in any way?
Well, it's hard to say because all of a sudden I'm in a paralyzed body as a quadriplegic, and I had pneumonia real bad. I had to do 3 months in an intensive care unit to beat that, and then they ship you over to the rehab part where you learn. You're there for 3 months at Craig Hospital in Colorado is where I did my rehab part, and it's boot camp for being paralyzed. And they teach you about 10 years worth of stuff that would, it's like, I like to tell people it's like 10 years worth of college in 3 months. It's a lot of stuff to learn. I never knew any stuff about medical. You learn about catheters, you learn about, um, how you're going to get out in the community, how you're going to hire caregivers, about wheelchairs, about all the safety things that all the pitfalls you can get into with paralysis, and just it's a lot to go through. So I don't really notice. I didn't really notice that it changed me, but I did have a pretty big desire to survive. So possibly that could have been from the NDE.
Mm-hmm. All right, if we move forward in time, what happened on your second NDE?
The second NDE, let's see, that one was when I was okay. So I had an acupuncture treatment, and there was one in my back, and one of the needles fell out, and I remember the acupuncturist would help me sit up and help me get back in my wheelchair. And this is like 15 years after the first one. So I was already pretty well adjusted to being disabled. And when he sat me up, I had a hard time breathing, and I'm like, oh my God. My hands were ice cold. I remember that. I didn't really say anything. I just got back in the car with my caregiver, and she drove me home. And I was experiencing some shortness of breath, and I grabbed an old inhaler I had to see if that would help with the lung, and it would help a little bit. And I was sort of like, okay, if I lay down and go to sleep, maybe I'll wake up and I'll be better. And so I pretty much went the whole day with um, kind of this lung problem. And my evening caregiver came in, and she looked at me and she goes, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I can't really breathe that good." And so she goes, "We're getting you in the car and we're going to the emergency room." And we did that. And I was like, let's just go to one of these small scale ones over here in like the strip mall. It's not urgent care. It is an emergency room, but it's not attached to a big hospital or anything. So we go in there and they do some x-rays, and the doctor comes in and goes, well, looks like your acupuncturist flattened tongue, and we're going to have to put a chest tube in." And I looked at the nurses, and they're sort of like behind him. Their eyes went like this, that he said when he said that. And they were like, "Wait, hang on. We don't do chest tubes in here. We ship him to the hospital." The hospital is like a 10-minute drive from this place I went. So, the nurses were really like adamant about, no, we got to get him over there. And this emergency room doctor he was crazy. He's like, no, we're doing it here. And so he had it all prepped, and he got it all ready. And I remember seeing the back of him going through their supplies. And he's like, who orders supplies around here? We don't have the right size chest tube for this guy, because I'm a little bit smaller of a person. And they're like, well, even more of a reason, to call the ambulance and get him off to the hospital. And he still said, no, I'm doing it. I'm going to do it with the wrong size. And, he put it in immediately. I had some relief. And then he called the ambulance to come and pick me up. And even the EMTs and the ambulance were, they were looking at each other like, whoa, we've never seen this kind of thing done in one of these smaller facilities. Like, whoa, this is crazy. He should have never done that. Anyway, so I make it to the hospital, and I believe it's the next morning where I really kind of come to, and I'm aware of what's going on. And nurse comes in and says, you want your head up a little bit so we can get you some breakfast. And yeah, sure, go ahead, do that. And as soon as she raised my head up, I'm sort of get this weird lightheadedness, and she looked kind of to the floor, and she's like, oh, and she ran out of the room. And all of a sudden I hear, the code blue being called. I had no idea what was going on. And, when they have a code blue in the hospital, it's basically anyone and everyone that's available, get to this room because somebody's having some problems. And we need to, try whatever they can to revive them. And so the troops come in, and I'm like, what's going on? And I'm getting a little bit more lightheaded. And, they kind of explained that this chest tube clipped an artery, a main artery between my ribs, and you're bleeding, you're about ready to bleed to death. So I'm like, oh, okay, and pretty quickly, I start seeing this, it's like white, it's like plasma is what I call it. It's like liquid. And one of the RNs had a ponytail and these big blue glasses, and I could see the ponytail whipping around, and the glasses too. I could see those through the blue, through the white milky stuff. Her glasses were blue, like a fluorescent blue, and I could really follow those along. And then when they would come real near to my face and say, are you okay? And I could see their whole face. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then they would pull away, and I couldn't see them. I could just see the ponytail and the glasses. But what happened was they just kept taking turns. And what they were really trying to do was get an IV in me, because I guess they didn't have one in. And I'm notoriously difficult to get an IV into, because I'm dehydrated frequently because I have a catheter. So the veins will roll a lot. They're very hard to hit, and they were having all kinds of problems. Each person would try something. They try my hand, and then they're like, "Okay, we can't get it." So they go, okay, next, we got the next person to try. And eventually they got to a doctor that was like, and my blood pressure was going down. There was a RN reading off my blood pressure. And, she's like, he's down to, 60 over 40. It got down to like 40 over 10 or something like that. And the surgeon came in and put a tarp over my head. And I remember hearing her go, okay, this is the oh shit moment. And she jabbed something, and, I felt it kind of go right through my neck, and whatever it was, it went right into my heart, and they were able to put some sort of catheter in there and pump some stuff in there, and I was back. Um, so that was kind of a near death experience, I think, in mostly just with the white stuff. I was pretty close to passing. So that was number two.
Do you feel like you were outside of your body while this was happening?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I was still, maybe not, because I'm laying on my back, and they're coming in and out, and I could see all the people around my bed.
Maybe you were slowly drifting out or slowly drifting into another realm?
That's what it felt like to me.
Now, did that experience change you in any way? At least metaphysically, supernaturally, spiritually?
I would say spiritually, it was after that one where I had a pretty just random curiosity about Buddhism, some spirituality stuff. I I learned some Reiki after that. I took my Reiki 1 and 2 classes. I never became a Reiki master, but I did study Tibetan Buddhism pretty heavily after that. And I learned about the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and I learned a little bit about the Vajrayana. And there was all this stuff about Vajrayana that's like, you got to finish the other two before you're ready for this next, the next level. You're going to learn some stuff, and I was like, what is it? What are they talking about? And I never really quite got all the way to it, but that's where I became more spiritual, I would say.
Let's move forward in time to your next NDE.
Okay. So that one was during COVID years. I had one. I usually have 6 caregivers that share all of my share all the care, obviously. And COVID was really difficult because everyone's worried about where have the other people been, and all my caregivers didn't trust where the other caregivers had been, because they're going to give it to me, and then I'm going to give it to them, and then their whole family has it. So I went down to 2 caregivers, and one of them, when I interviewed her and hired her, I asked her, tell me something unique about yourself, and she had told me, well, I've always wanted to see an alien. And then she pulls her lip down, like, and there's a tattoo of an alien head under her lip. So I'm like, all right, you're hired. I think that's cool. I like that. So she was one of them that took a lot of the shifts, and they would stay at my house and help me out around here and stuff. So during that time, me and her went down the UFO rabbit hole kind of thing. We watched every single thing we could find on YouTube, Netflix, whatever. We just were starving for all this information, and that's when we ran across the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind documentary, and learned about CE5 and Dr. Greer and all the stuff involved with that. And so I was like, hey, let's download this app. It's, I can't remember how much it is, like $14 or something. And I'm like, yeah, it's worth it. Let's try it, So we started doing that out on my back deck at night, and we're out there thinking that we're gonna see these flying saucers at night, and they do tell you, pay attention to animals, pay attention to what's going on around you. And I noticed right away that my dog would have her nose down to the ground, to the deck, and she's like sniffing around in like circles, almost like a figure eight at one point. And this is something that I had never seen her do, and I still haven't. I don't see her do it anymore. It's just out of characteristic for her. And that was one thing that I noticed was happening, but no UFOs, no aliens appearing or anything. And then we did that for about 2 weeks, every night, for an hour out there in the dark. And then, we're like, this is, maybe not going to happen. So we gave up, and we stopped doing it. And probably 2 or 3 days later, after we stopped doing it, I go out on the deck in the morning. It's 11 o'clock a.m. And I look up to my right, and I'm like, whoa, there's these 3 things up there. The silver ball type UFO stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, the caregiver's name was April. And I'm like, April, get out here right now and check this out. And she comes out and looks at it. And I'm like, there we go. There they are. They showed up. Not when we're trying to call them. They showed up the day late, whatever. There it is. Here it is. And she's like, that's not it. I don't like this. This isn't what I thought it would be. And I'm like, whoa, hang on, wait. It's not really up to us how this appears. I'm saying that's got to be UFOs. And they were strange. They were like, they looked like pinballs, like metal balls. And the insides were sort of rotating, like churning. And they were kind of, they're in a formation, like a one on top of the other two. And they were kind of like floating a little bit towards each other. And, it was real loose, but they stayed in that formation.
How far away were they? You can estimate.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. And that's one of the hardest questions to answer. I really don't know. Sometimes I feel like they're as far away as an airplane would be.
Well, how big do you think they were?
That's the other question. Like, I guess you'd have to know either one of those, like how big are they to know how far away they are, or how far are they to know how big they are. So I really have to be honest and say, I don't know. But
Okay.
they weren't, 3 feet away.
You would say like maybe they're as far away as like seeing a passenger jet flying in the sky?
It felt like that to me. So they would have to be pretty big.
So they would probably be as big as a passenger jet, maybe?
Yeah, if they were that high, but it's okay. So they're definitely higher than my house, because they slowly moved from my right, and they went around the top of my house, and I'm turning, and I did a full 180, and I think what's interesting is when I look to my right, so the sun is coming up on my left. So the sun was shining right on them. And as I slowly did a 180, they came around and passed the sun, and then went on the other side of the sun. And they started blinking. And in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, I get you guys. You're showing me that it's definitely not a reflection of the sun, because there's no way that would be possible. So they were able to blink, and then they disappeared one at a time.
Did they ever come back?
No.
Well, did April believe it really was a UFO?
Well, eventually she did say, okay, we that was something that we can't explain. And yes, it was flying. So, you know, I'm like, that's it. And but it was a little weird, you know, she kind of had a problem with it. It wasn't what she wanted. So that was interesting.
What did she want?
She wanted discs at night in the sky, you know, lighting up like what we were trying to get. I point out to her that, you know, we have no idea what that was. But here, get this. I felt like they were laughing the whole time.
Do you feel like they were definitely not man-made?
Yeah, for sure. Whatever that was, I don't think that was man-made, no.
Do you feel like they were making fun of you or they were spreading love?
Probably more like making fun of, like, you know, look at this monkey that is thinking, you know, that's mesmerized by this. That's what it felt like. It was like a bunch of humor kind of feeling, which you know, that blew me away. Just that I felt like that.
You weren't afraid?
No, I've never felt afraid. No.
All right. So you see these ships finally. And then at what point do you have your next NDE?
Great question. It's about 10 days later. April is still helping me. And I get, when you're a quadriplegic, you could get this condition called autonomic dysreflexia, which is there's some pain happening below your level of injury that you can't really feel. You can't identify where it is. Usually it's a catheter, a bladder, a full bladder that needs to be released. Sometimes it can be something with your bowel, some gas, pain. It's pain. It's a pain thing. You could get cut, your skin, and you'll have this condition, and your head starts pounding, and your blood pressure goes high. And you know, if you don't get help quickly or stop the problem, you'll have a stroke and you can die real easy. So that started happening about 10 days later, and I'm like, okay, what is it? You know, let's check the catheter. Is the bag on my leg filling up? And it wasn't. So we kind of narrowed it down to that. And she wasn't really an RN. She's just a caregiver person. And so she wasn't qualified to change the catheter. So we went to the small scale emergency room again, which was, of course, not my first choice, but we wanted to get there quickly. That was the point. And the doctor, she cut the catheter and pulled it out. I have a thing called a suprapubic catheter, which, you know, when you're in this situation, it's they put a hole in like your stomach, and it goes into your bladder. So the catheter goes right into my stomach. And so they pull that out, and it's like a geyser of urine coming out, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, my blood pressure is back regulated down to my normal. You know, it's obvious that was what the problem was. You know, and they put a new one in, and then the doctor says, why don't we do some imaging of your abdomen just in case there's anything going on? And they put contrast in. And I went into the CT scan, and the IV infiltrated, which the vein blew and the contrast went into my body. I started having an allergic reaction to the contrast, which frequently happens to people. And So I started having the whole thing over again where it starts getting white, and I can't uh, really focus. And it's the same thing as the second one, where I could see kind of eyes and heads moving around. And the emergency room doctor is really like frantically trying to get an IV into me, and they can't do it. She's trying in my neck. And I like to say that it felt like somebody tried to make a fire with two sticks, like rubbing them together and just not really knowing what they were doing. And uh, she was having a hard time. And I put my, uh, I remember one of the nurses going to they were measuring it with pulse instead of blood pressure. And she got down to his pulse is 10. And I remember just going, all right, this is it. I'm out of here. This is it. This is where it ends. And I remember putting my head off to the right like this. And I hear the noises that we were using from the CE5 app. So clear as a bell, exact same noises right in my right ear. And boom, all of a sudden I'm back and I'm like, hey, I'm talking, I'm here, I'm there, like, and they're still trying all these things to get IVs in.
Now, are those the noises on the CE5 app? It's like these different beeping sounds and stuff to try to kind of let the UFOs know where you're at?
Yeah, I guess it's a binaural beat kind of thing. And the way I understood it was that these were noises that were found at crop circles that had been recorded near crop circles. And that's really as far into the CE5 protocols that I've really gone. I really don't understand CE5 that much, but I go back and I play that same sound frequently, and I get stuff to happen.
What do you mean you get stuff to happen?
Just, well, like a lot of it's paranormal. I would guess, like a lot of noises happening around me. Sometimes I'll ask questions. I don't do it a lot. I'm a little, at first I'm like, oh, this is great. You can just do this and get all kinds of contact. But there's been a few times where I'm like, ew, this has a weird feel sometimes. So I'm very careful about who I do it with and who I show it to. I make sure that they're very open.
In the beginning, I mentioned that you had alien abduction or you've been abducted. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. At least that's what I feel like it could be. And the way it happened is important. So over the last 10 years, I've been having these very like real feeling dreams occasionally, not all the time. And I would wake up and tell my caregivers about it in the morning. If I was on that level with them, I'm not always on that level with all of them, but I would tell them like, okay, I had this really, really bizarre sexual dream last night. And it's not the first time, but it's like this, okay, this is perfect. This is like real, and this is like the perfect woman for me. And then somehow, sometime during the act, something strange happens, like just real strange where, okay, it's like, okay, well, maybe I could have one of these dreams where the whole thing's perfect, but there's always something broken. There's always some strange thing that happens. So I've been telling him about this for a while. And then I ran across Whitley Strieber,
Mm-hmm.
and I listened to that, the stuff that he went through. And I also saw the movie Communion. And I'm like, whoa, this could be that.
Do you think you are being physically taken or your consciousness pulled out of your body and taken somewhere?
Wow, that I don't know for sure. But this was about a year ago. One of my friends did say, it sounds like these dreams you're having, like you're being abducted. And I was like, what? No way, man, this is just a dream. But after he told me that, I had 3 nights in a row of where it was really real, and it was more like an abduction kind of thing. Uh, and it's like a woman,
Does she look humanoid or is she like part cat or something else?
more like a mantid kind of thing. Which are you familiar with Buddhism at all? Do you know what a dakini is?
I don't.
It's kind of one of those blue women figures that uh, has a lot of like jewelry, and she kind of looks like that, but she's brownish and a little bit like an insect. But there's a smell, like this weird odor, and she's definitely trying to let me know that she's doing her best to be attractive to me.
Wow.
Yeah. Because she comes across like, I know I'm not attractive to you, but I want your DNA. Your DNA is precious. You're strong. Look what you've lived through for 30 something years, 33 years now. So that message is conveyed to me.
Do you think that this is the result of that initial CE5 contact that you had with those 3 silver balls?
I'm not sure. But the things did start happening after that, and not, we're talking about, the last 5 years, probably. It doesn't happen every day, but it could be, maybe it opened an awareness in me. I don't know, but you hear a lot of people talk about the woman in white. And honestly, the last time I saw her, she did have a white, like, it looked like a rabbit fur kind of hat on, and like a shawl. And she says, "Would you like me to remove this now?" And that's really the last time that I've seen her in these dreams, or whatever you want to call it.
All right, let's move forward to your last NDE.
Okay. That happened. Geez. That happened that was about 2 years ago in February. It coincided with the Super Bowl UFO shoot down thing. I remember that all happening while I was in the hospital. I had a really bad bladder infection that had crossed the bloodstream and became sepsis. And so they had hospitalized me for like 3 days. And there was a nurse that had come in, and she wanted to put this little sticker anchor thing on my leg to hold my catheter so it wouldn't kink while I was in the bed. And I remember telling her, "Hey, no, don't do that. I don't use those. I just let it hang off the side of the bed. And she put it on anyway and didn't tell me. And then at one point I called in the CNAs to come in and roll me onto my side, which had, I'm like, okay, I'm not wearing one of those things, so it won't cake the catheter. It'll just be hanging there. And so basically it got really kinked and I was asleep. And I just remember in my sleep feeling this, like, I gotta go to the bathroom bad, kind of, but I couldn't wake up. And eventually I I went into this like world where like the sky was like this real like purple and pink kind of color. Just it was so real, so much realer than reality, like reality feels. And um we were there's a lot of like fluorescent purple, like geometric shaped buildings and objects. And I was standing with somebody and we were waiting for the Hawks. That's all I knew. They were saying, we're waiting for the Hawks to come so we could see them. And I'm like, okay. And these big black things came that were like, I don't know, it was a whole nother world, very surreal. And then after that, we were moving through a field of like tall grass that was kind of like darker grass. And I remember like putting my hand down and these little insects were crawling on my hand. And it was very peaceful. I felt like the only thing I could really compare it to is when I was in Hawaii once. Just the water temperature was like 85. And that to me felt so comfortable and welcoming and stuff. So that's what it felt like. And these little insects were looking at me, and I got this feeling that that they were trying to communicate to me that they make crop circles, which I don't know. And then it went from there. I was waiting in a line of people to get into this cave where everyone was so like anxious to get. But it was still just real comfortable, real comfortable. And then all of a sudden I woke up and my head was pounding and I'm just laying in this hospital bed. It's just boom, 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 boom. And, I hit the call button. They usually have a little ball for me because I can't push a button with my hands. And they came rushing in and my blood pressure was 250 over, I can't remember the lower number, but it was high for me. And, I was about ready to have a stroke. They they undid the kink in the catheter and, the bag filled all the way up twice. And I came back to life.
After any of your near-death experiences, did you notice you had any new abilities or gifts that could be considered psychic?
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I've always had a little bit of like intuition type psychic stuff where, the whole you think of a person and then they call kind of stuff. I've always had a little bit of that. But I had just recently it was about 3 months ago, I had a dream where I'm like a camera, not really a person. And I'm like up against this little patch of skin. And then it's it's about a 30-second dream, and it's panning out and diagonal and up. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a human head. And it's coming off the back of it, like right here, of a human head. And it's kind of, the camera's panning diagonal out. And I'm like, whoa. Okay. As I get further out, I'm like, well, that's Trump sitting there. That's Trump. And as I get out further, I'm like, okay, he's sitting in the Ford Theater off to the side. And I'm like, okay, he's in there by himself. And then the dream stops. And then we all know what happened in Ford Theater. And then just when was that? A couple weeks ago, we know what happened to Trump. So I don't know if you would consider that psychic ability or not, but that freaks me out, man, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Have you performed any other CE5 contact?
Yes, yeah, I try every now and then. When I find someone that I feel like is open to it, with an open mind, I'll talk to them about it. And so me and one of my caregivers, one of my current ones, we went up to Pagosa Springs in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, where that's where a lot of contact is made with with UFOs and ETs and just a lot of spiritual stuff happening in those areas. And so we went up there and, she's like, all right, we're going to see some aliens. And so we opened up and I played my noises that I play. And, we just sort of meditate and we look around and, we did it for about 30 minutes. And then she's like, all right, we're not going to see any aliens. We're looking at the sky. But I just I grabbed my phone and I just like, okay, I'm going to take a picture of the sky off to the left. And when I did that, the flash went off. And I mean, it scared me a little bit. I know I said nothing scares me, but it shocked me. It startled me. And there was like this big, like white blob there that, the flash reflected off of it. And it spooked me, and I could tell whatever that thing was, it spooked it too. That's what it felt like to me. And then when you look at the picture, there's like 2 dots and like a blur. And there's 3 of those all up there. And then 4 minutes later, she took a picture of me sitting there. And the same kind of thing is a little bit further down on the sidewalk. So, I'm always trying to debunk anything that I come up with. I'm like, I'm not going to tell anybody because, I don't want people going, oh, that's a reflection from here. You didn't think about that. But there was no way to debunk that. So I don't know what that was, but about 12 days later, which was last Saturday, she sent me a video that she got. She's trying to take a video of lightning out of her window. And she's holding the camera steady up against the glass. And there is this really crazy thing that's happening in the upper left corner. And it's moving around. It's definitely not a reflection. It's definitely not camera. And it's these 3 things coming together and going apart, and they're moving all over the place. And when I slow it down frame by frame, and there's one frame where it looks exactly like the CE5 app, the balls, but it's upside down. It's 2, and then it's 1 underneath. And I mean, and what gets even crazier is that she has a hearing problem. She wears hearing aids. And I asked her, I'm like, because there's a guy in the CE5 documentary, I think his name is Ray Hernandez, that had a hearing problem.
Okay.
And it was, he claims to be cured, or somewhat cured from that. And I honestly, I didn't even put this together thinking that she had a hearing problem. But then I asked her, I'm like, how's your hearing? And she says, that's interesting that you would ask that. I haven't used my hearing aids for 3 days.
Have you spoken to her recently?
Right before our interview today, I texted her and I said, are you still not using your hearing aids? And she said, I have put them back in, but I can't tell. I can't tell the difference between wearing them and not wearing them.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I know, it's huge. And then I've played the noises before, and I'm like, okay, let me focus on this question. Can you fix me? And I get, I tried it a couple times, I get nothing. And then one time I get this feeling that it's like, no, we can't fix you, but we can help you. So that was kind of cool, I thought.
Yeah, I think it's very cool. And if you do
Yeah.
get any significant changes, we should bring you back and talk about it.
Oh, I'd love to. There is one other thing. Can I talk about?
Sure.
I don't want to waste all your time here.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. There was one other like dream kind of thing that happened to me. A lot of this happened in February this year, where I'm in. Okay, so I wake up in my bed, and I do this frequently. I'll keep my eyes closed, and I'm like, okay, I'm in my bed. Just waiting for my caregiver to come, and I open my eyes, but I'm not in my bed. I'm in the bottom of Glenwood Canyon, laying in the bottom, which is a canyon here in Colorado. And it's real deep and it's real scary to drive through there. And there's 3 orbs that pop up above me, way high up there. And they are kind of giving me this, I guess it's a download. I never really knew what that was until this happened. But I have the message of, you got to get your stuff together, people, because we have the ability to do this and we will do it. We've done it in the past. We're going to melt the ice caps. And that we did that. That's what the Younger Dryas was. And I'm like, whoa. And it was so profound.
That was what was? Younger Dryas?
The Younger Dryas, that period of time in geology?
No.
Where there's like a giant flood and they haven't really figured out. I mean, this is the way I understand it, that they haven't figured out what that was. How did that happen? It happened real quick. So I don't know. They said, they kind of gave me the message that the orbs did it then and they'll do it again. And then they go, like this real loud noise, just whoa, and it was so piercing and loud. And then I came out of it, and the whole day my ears are ringing like bad. I thought that was pretty significant.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I didn't mention before we started is that you are an artist and you create great paintings of ETs and all kinds of stuff. If people want to take a look at your work, where do they go? To your Instagram or a website?
Yeah, Instagram. Yeah, it's Matt Hendrick Art. On Facebook, on Twitter, it's the same. I have a website, hendrickmedia.com.
Well, what's amazing is that you're painting by putting a paintbrush in your mouth and doing it like that.
Yeah, I do. I can do some stuff with my hand. Um, I like to tell people that, they started me out at the Craig Hospital, putting a brush in my hand and wiggle my shoulder, and it was nothing like I wanted. So I gave up for years and years. And about 7 years ago, I saw a guy on YouTube doing it with a brush in his mouth, and I tried it, and I was like, "Whoa, I'm back! I can do some detail now." So I'll do some abstract work with my arms, and then I'll do the detail stuff with my mouth.
Have you ever painted the tunnel from your NDE?
No, I've never even thought about trying that.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be.
Now, you also wrote a book about your experiences, right?
Yeah, Uncommon Vision. I just released it on June 16th. So, a little over a month ago.
If people want to find out more about it, do they go to Amazon or your website?
You could go on Hendrick Media and click on the link, or it's on Amazon. Search for Matt Hendrick. You could search for Uncommon Vision, Hendrick Media, any of those. And it's my memoir.
All right. Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want people to know about?
Not currently, no. I spend a lot of time going to festivals, and I do live painting and sell my prints there and my books.
That would be pretty cool if you live streamed yourself painting. You ever considered doing that, like on YouTube?
I have some videos out there of some time lapse of me painting. If you look on my Twitter profile or Instagram or any of those, there's a lot of those videos.
Well, if people want to reach out to you, are you open for questions?
100%, yes.
What's the best
I love
way?
it.
What's the best way to contact you?
I would say email matt@hendrickmedia.com, or any of the socials are a good place to start.
Are you able to answer those yourself, or do you have to have a caregiver type it for you?
No, I do everything with voice recognition.
Oh, okay, great.
So yeah, I can do all that.
Matt, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
One thing I've learned from being a quadriplegic is that, the little things, I like to say traffic and stuff like that, shouldn't bother people as much as, just the little things aren't so bad. All the hatred that goes on in this world, and we have it pretty good. We have, at this point in history, I would say we have it good. And we need to look at things that way and stop trying to be so divisive with one another, and, just get along. This is good right now.
Matt, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.